melting down in front of Vince's show. 3, 2, 1, and the room went wide. Every little word had nowhere to hide. Hot mic on, hot mic on, right there in the Vince podcast on. Best crowd ever, best crowd strong, best audience anywhere sings along. Hot mic on, hot mic on. We laughed, we sputtered, we said too much. Folks leaned in like they knew our luck. Vince in the middle, taking it in, and that whole crowd grinned and grinned and grinned. Hot mic on, hot mic on, hot mic on, hot mic on, right there in the Vince podcast on. Best crowd ever, best crowd strong, best audience anywhere sings along. Hot mic on, hot mic on. Best
Yeah, baby.
audience anywhere.
Best audience.
Hot mic on.
Yes, indeed.
Hot
Hey,
mic
good morning.
on.
Yeah, baby. Yeah, we're getting started, ladies and gentlemen. We got a lot to get to today. Hold on tight. Here it comes. Hey, everybody, welcome to Vince on a Wednesday. It is great to have you with us. Man, that Justice Department's been staying very, very busy. We've got a lot to get to today as we talk about a massive prosecution in the case of COVID. Finally, some accountability for the COVID chaos. We will get to that today. We have an amazing guest on that subject, one of President Trump's top investigators into the very origins of COVID. Will join us right here on this program. His name's David Asher. That's coming up on the show today. Do not miss this conversation. This guy's good. We're going to have a lot to talk about. And then, of course, the big prosecution of James Comey. He's hit with a second indictment, this time for threatening the life of the President of the United States. We'll dive into all of the details of that. As Todd Blanche, man, that guy seems to be doing something. We got a lot more ahead coming up on this edition of Vince. Great to have you with us today, as always. Always nice to hear from you. By the way, while you're here, would you make sure to subscribe to the program? Would you? And also, if you click like, if you're on rumble.com/Vince, click like on the show. It helps, I think. Nobody told me really, but I'm pretty sure that the like thing is supposed to improve our standing in the algorithm. We'll take it. Thank you for all of this. Appreciate you guys for supporting the show. I want to talk about a great sponsor that supports the show and fires me up every day, Blackout Coffee. I love Blackout Coffee. If you like your coffee strong, smooth, roasted for maximum flavor, Blackout Coffee is for you. Blackout Coffee is an America First company. They roast their beans right here in the United States and then ship them fresh to your door. Their blends are bold. They're full-bodied. They're crafted for people who take their coffee seriously. Their medium dark roast delivers a strong flavor without bitterness. It's smooth, powerful, and it gives you that extra boost that you need to stay focused all day long. What I also love is they have a great subscribe and save option. Don't run out of coffee. Swap flavors, pause, cancel anytime. Get deep discounts plus free shipping, all while earning reward points on every purchase that you can redeem for future orders. It's convenient. It saves you money. They have whole bean ground flavored coffees, espresso, single serve options. There's something for everybody. Today, get 20% off your first order, blackoutcoffee.com. Use the promo code Vince at checkout. That's blackoutcoffee.com, promo code Vince. Get 20% off your first order. Blackout Coffee. Yeah, good morning to you. KJ Malk says she just bought Blackout for her husband yesterday. Very, very cool. He's going to love it, I promise you. Good morning, good morning, good morning to JW66WNY716. That's a very complicated username, but I rolled through it with professionalism this morning. Let's start with the James Comey saga today. James freaking Comey just got slapped yesterday with yet another indictment from the United States Department of Justice, this time for his shell art on a beach where he put shells together to declare 8647 and then acted like he just stumbled upon them, like he had no idea what was even going on. Look, random shells. They look like numbers, don't they, sweetie? You should post it to Instagram, his wife says. In fact, remember, here's James Comey last year once the rest of us were like, wait a second, Eliminate Trump? You posted an eliminate Trump photo to Instagram? What's wrong with you? You're a psychopath. Here's James Comey trying to explain it all away while he was hawking his new stupid book last year. Cut 6. Watch this. It was my wife's fault. He blamed his wife. James Comey did. When in fact you know very well what happened. His overgrown ass was lying on the beach, shaping shells into numbers and then posting them to his Instagram account like he's a teenage girl. The guy who posts selfie videos talking about his love for Taylor Swift was definitely doing shell art on the beach. 8647. You love how he feigns ignorance. Like the two of them, we walked up on it and then we stared at him. We thought, why would someone write an address on the beach? An address? What a con artist. You're not a very good one, by the way. What a con artist. An address. If it's an address, where's the road? What are you talking about? Yeah, you didn't think it was an address. You drew it, you dumbass. That's James Comey. This is the same sort of kind of feigned ignorance that you get from earlier this week. We got from Norah O'Donnell. Remember that clip where President Trump sits down with her after the assassination attempt? Yet another assassination attempt. Yet another lefty tries to 8647 this past weekend. And President Trump sits down with Norah O'Donnell on CBS. And then she starts saying, well, the guy wrote in the manifesto that you're a rapist and a pedophile and a traitor. What do you have to say to that? And the president said, you're a disgrace. And she goes, oh, you thought he was talking about you? Feigned ignorance. Not very clever feigned ignorance. Not at all. But it gives the game away. When your excuses are that absurd, when you pretend that you're that stupid, then everybody knows that you're that guilty. So in Comey's case, it's just ridiculous what he was doing. Absolutely ridiculous. Clearly trying to whip his left-wing cheerleaders into a complete frenzy. Look, I said we got to eliminate Trump. Don't you agree? And then pretended I didn't have anything to do with it. Not good. Not good. In fact, criminal, according to the United States Department of Justice, which under Todd Blanche, the acting attorney general right now, just dropped a big fat indictment on James Comey's head yesterday, a grand jury with 2 charges. Here's Todd Blanche yesterday announcing the charges, both involving threats against the President of the United States. Watch this, cut 2.
Today, a grand jury sitting in the Eastern District of North Carolina returned an indictment against James Comey on 2 counts. The first count is that on or about May 15th of last year, he knowingly and willfully making a threat to take the life of and to inflict bodily harm upon the President of the United States. Count 2, same day, May 15th, 2025, that the defendant, James Comey, knowingly and willfully transmitting in interstate commerce a communication that contained a threat to kill the President of the United States. Both of these counts carry a maximum term of imprisonment of 10 years. So I think it's fair to say that threatening the life of anybody is dangerous and potentially a crime. Threatening the life of the President of the United States will never be tolerated by the Department of Justice.
Now, I want to talk about venues here for a moment. You hear from Todd Blanche. This is happening in the Eastern District of North Carolina. Eastern District of North Carolina. Now, in case you're concerned about, where do Democrats concentrate in North Carolina? That's in the West. That's the western side of the state. The eastern side of the state, you're going to get a lot more conservatives. In other words, you're going to get a lot more rational people who will consider this case fairly. They will adhere to the Constitution. They will adhere to the law. They will adhere to justice, and they will render judgments on the basis of that. Eastern North Carolina, love Eastern North Carolina. I've spent a lot of years of my life in Eastern North Carolina, living on specifically Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. My dad, a Marine, we spent a lot of time there. I worked there in local radio, worked there in the local newspaper business. Loved it. Love Eastern North Carolina. Great people, just absolutely wonderful Americans. And so, in other words, the jury pool of Eastern North Carolina is composed of wonderful Americans who are going to make rational decisions about how to handle James Comey here, which is good. Everybody, if you stand criminally accused, you deserve a fair day in court. And James Comey is going to get a fair day in court in Eastern North Carolina. Love that. Now, distinguish that from the Eastern District of Virginia, where you had a situation where a grand jury did return charges against Comey, and this was for lying to Congress, lying about his dissemination of information to the media, And yet that case collapsed given the judges who were involved and sort of the corruption inside the jurisdiction. That's not these problems don't exist in the Eastern District of North Carolina right now, God willing. It looks like we're in a much better venue for a real prosecution of this guy. So keep an eye on that element. That's a huge piece of this. And we'll explore the specifics here because, you know, obviously James Comey is already mounting like this sort of ignorance defense. Like, oh, I didn't know I was threatening the guy and I have my free speech rights and I can post this to Instagram. We'll address all of that in a moment. But first, I just want to concentrate on to what extent is this a politicized prosecution, as the left would say, that this is some sort of selective prosecution dedicated to only the president's political opponents. Todd Blanche says it's nonsense because this very district keeps prosecuting people for threatening government officials and presidents of the United States of both political parties. Here's Todd Blanche yesterday describing this. Listen, cut 3.
So I think it's fair to say that threatening the life of anybody is dangerous and potentially a crime. Threatening the life of the President of the United States will never be tolerated by the Department of Justice. Over the past year, this department has charged dozens of cases involving threats against all sorts of individuals. We take these seriously, every single one of them. For example, just today in the Northern District of Florida, there was a guilty plea from an individual who threatened multiple political leaders, including President Trump. In the Eastern District of North Carolina, where this case was indicted earlier today, there are multiple threats cases very similar to this one, including one where the defendant pled guilty recently to threatening former President Biden, another one that's scheduled to go to trial this summer, another one indicted, an individual was indicted for threatening Tom Homan. I say that to say that while this case is unique and this indictment stands out because of the name of the defendant, his alleged conduct is the same kind of conduct that we will never tolerate and that we will always investigate and regularly prosecute.
Doesn't matter who you are. Nobody's above the law. Your stature, your name ID is not a shield from accountability, nor should it be. So when you say you want to eliminate the President of the United States and you write it out in shell art on the beach, you should be held accountable for your own actions, which is what Comey's being subjected to right now. Now, there are no guarantees about the way this process plays out. You know, James Comey may mount some sort of successful defense. Who knows if he gets a judge that helps throw this out. You know, even Jonathan Turley this morning, I saw posting about this. Turley, no fan of Comey at all. Jonathan Turley came out this morning and he said the following about this indictment. He said in his new column, because I've been one of Comey's longest and most vocal critics. However, it's the Constitution, not Comey, that must drive this analysis. He thinks the indictment is unlikely to survive First Amendment challenges. Maybe true. Maybe. But the reality here is that the Justice Department is bringing this case with evidence. With evidence. In fact, yesterday, one of the reporters asked Todd Blanche, how are you going to prove his intent here? He says that it was just innocent, that they just stumbled upon this on the beach. And Todd Blanche says, we're going to prove it the way every case is proven, with evidence, all of it. Cut 5, watch this.
Sir, how will you prove intent when, as the director had acknowledged, Mr. Comey said he did not associate 86 with doing harm, and he took it down promptly, said it was political speech, not an intent to harm the president?
Well, it's not, this case was indicted today. This conduct occurred about a year ago, May 15th of last year. There's been a tremendous amount of investigation. And how do you prove intent in any case? You prove intent with witnesses, with documents, with the defendant himself to the extent it's appropriate. And that's how we'll improve intent in this case. And so I think that talking about what Mr. Comey will or will not do if there's a trial, when there's a trial, it's very premature for me to do that today.
With evidence. It won't just be the post, it'll be everything. It'll be everything. We're going to present to you every last piece of evidence we have on this subject. And we'll get to the bottom of this. Remember, James Comey was interviewed by government officials after he made this threat. The Secret Service paid him a visit. They talked to him. He made statements to them. All of this is going to go into the evidence in this case against him. And the Justice Department felt confident enough that these charges could stand up through a court process that they brought the charges. So now James Comey is going to have his day in court. Now, remember, somebody in the chat just said this too, and I completely agree with this, that the process is a punishment here. Now, that's not the reason this is being done. It's not merely to subject him to the process. They're doing this because they believe he genuinely violated the law, and they're accusing him of that. And so now he's got to go to court to prove otherwise. But this is a situation where James Comey's got to pay a lawyer. James Comey's got to be, he's arrested, he's arraigned, he's mugshotted, he goes through the process. This is all, he's now being subjected to a process that the left has gleefully subjected Donald Trump to over and over and over again on the basis of false charges. False charges, that Trump violated laws when he didn't. Now James Comey's being accused of violating a law when it looks pretty clearly like he did. So now he's got to go through the process too, again. And he's miserable about it. And good, it couldn't happen to a better person. Comey deserves it. He definitely does. So this is a kind of a fascinating development. I like seeing that Todd Blanche is doing this. I'm interested. I think there's something going on in chat. You tell me if you feel like this is in your view too. Do you feel like Todd Blanche represents a sea change at the Justice Department? Chat, tell me, do you think Todd Blanche represents a meaningful change from Pam Bondi at the United States Department of Justice? Is this your sense? Because I feel like what we are witnessing right now is the prosecutorial floodgates are starting to be opened right now at levels. Now I'm not condemning Pam Bondi's tenure. I think Pam Bondi, there's a lot that the Justice Department has to be proud of from the time that she was in office, specifically as it relates to the activities of the FBI, which falls under the Justice Department. The fact that they were able to get the murder rate to the lowest level, the fact that they were bringing all these prosecutions against a lot of Democrats. I've gone through the list before. A lot of Democrats have been prosecuted, high-profile people, to include James Comey. That was in the Eastern District of Virginia, as I said before. But something feels meaningfully different about Todd Blanche here. Because what did we see just in the last week? The Southern Poverty Law Center, this epic money center on the left. James Comey now prosecuted in the Eastern District of North Carolina. We just got, and I'm going to get into the details on this in just a moment, we just got a massive indictment of one of the leading operators in the COVID conspiracy against the United States of America. Not a small deal, massive deal. As Anthony Fauci got a fat pardon from President Otto, his second in command, this guy David Morans, his chief henchman, just prosecuted by the United States Department of Justice on the basis of stuff that we actually knew about years ago, finally being prosecuted now under Todd Blanche. Is that a coincidence? I think what's happening right now is, and chat's agreeing with me, for those of you listening on the audio podcast, they do think Blanche represents a sea change. Blanche is doing something that Pam Bondi was not. Blanche is doing something that Pam Bondi was not. And I'm here for it, because accountability is what I voted for. Accountability is what you voted for. We voted for criminal accountability for people who broke our laws and hurt our country. And all of a sudden, we've got rapid fire, boom, 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 prosecutions all coming out right now. It's amazing. It's amazing. And we'll get into more of it here in just a moment, including the fact that yesterday, did you guys see this? The FBI raided the Quality Learning Center. Yeah, in Minnesota. Yes. Yes. More of that, please. I've got a lot more coming up here on this edition of Vince. I want to take you to one of our great sponsors now. We love Rumble, don't we? We love Rumble. Rumble's great. Rumble.com/Vince is where you can watch us each day on this great platform. Love doing this. It's a free speech platform. And they also have this great free finance platform. It's called Rumble Wallet. Rumble Wallet. You know about Rumble Wallet yet? You should. If you've ever been curious about buying and investing in crypto, Bitcoin, stablecoins, USAT, but you felt like it was too complicated, Rumble Wallet's an easy way to get started. You can buy, sell, and manage your cryptocurrencies all in one place. Very straightforward. Now, what makes Rumble Wallet unique is that you can use it to support the Freedom First community that we've all built here together on Rumble. Download the Rumble Wallet app, sign up with your existing Rumble account, complete a few security steps, and then you're set up in just minutes. You can start with just a few dollars, and with MoonPay built into Rumble Wallet, you can easily buy crypto using your credit card, your debit card, or your bank wire. If you've been thinking about the advantages of crypto, just download Rumble Wallet now. Click the link in our description or search for Rumble Wallet in your app store. Download Rumble Wallet today and move your assets to where they belong, in your hands, in your control. Rumble Wallet is a technology provider only. It's not a custodial service. You can see terms at wallet.rumble.com. Rumble Wallet. Love Rumble Wallet, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for supporting our program. Rumble, thank you for hosting our program. Appreciate you as a great operation. All right, so James Comey gets indicted. The media freak out is definitely here. But look, just to finish on the Comey indictment here for a moment, and we got a lot to talk about because the Justice Department was staying very busy yesterday. Here is the U.S. Attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia yesterday, the Eastern District, of North Carolina yesterday. Boyle is his last name, and here's what he was saying about why this is taking place and how James Comey is not going to receive any special treatment whatsoever. Listen.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney General. Earlier today, a grand jury in the Eastern District of North Carolina returned a true bill indicting Mr. James Comey with committing 2 felonies. Count 1, he knowingly and willfully made a threat to kill and to inflict bodily harm upon the President of the United States in violation of 18 U.S.C. 871A. Count 2, he knowingly and willfully transmitted in interstate and foreign commerce a communication that contained a threat to kill President Trump in violation of 18 U.S.C. 875C. Mr. Comey will be given every form of due process all citizens are entitled to receive, to include a trial by a jury of his peers. In the Eastern District of North Carolina, it doesn't matter who you are. We take all threat cases seriously and prosecute anyone who violates federal law, regardless of title or status. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. U.S. Attorney. Appreciate you, brother, for doing this. So James Comey now being prosecuted for his threats. And Comey, through the years, even in the reinterpretation of 8647, I didn't mean to kill him. I just meant to stagnate him. I meant to hog tie him. I meant to slow him down. Well, James Comey's been pulling that kind of crap for years, too. Remember, he leaked his personal conversations with the President of the United States, memorialized on official government documents, to the New York Times. And then he claimed that, those were my personal memos, therefore I was allowed to leak them. No, you weren't. Those were government documents, you absolute scam artist. And he did that to get a special counsel appointed, Bob Mueller, remember that? And then Mueller gets appointed, and then the rest is history. The rest is history. The Trump-Russia collusion conspiracy hoax was given some of its biggest flames by the most gas on the fire by James Comey. And here's basically the consequences of Comey's behavior beginning to catch up with him. Good. Now you get to face down the justice system that you abused. Have fun with that. Okay. The FBI yesterday raided the Quality Learning Center and a whole bunch of other places and more than 20 other businesses all across Minnesota yesterday, which is that's a great deal of fun for those of us who would like to see justice in the world. Here is the New York Post recitation of the news yesterday. Quality Learning Center, 20 other Minnesota daycares raided by FBI as a part of a massive fraud investigation. The FBI raiding the infamous Quality Learning Center and more than 20 other businesses all across the state. They were investigating a multi-billion-dollar social services fraud ring. These are tied, of course, to businesses in the Somali American community, sources telling the Post. Quote, today, the FBI with federal, state, and local law enforcement involved in court-authorized law enforcement activity as a part of an ongoing fraud investigation, Justice Department official telling the New York Post. You can see the FBI agents raiding what looks like the outside of the Quality Learning Center in this image, rumble.com/Vince for you to see it. Agents used a battering ram to enter at least one of the alleged daycares Metro Learning Center, according to KTSP. The targets include the Quality Learning Center, as well as a whole bunch of other places. President Trump had announced this war on fraud in his February State of the Union address, and he put Vice President J.D. Vance in charge of the task force. Of course, they also have an assistant U.S. attorney now who's reporting directly to the vice president on this. And they went after these guys. They went after all these guys, and they're trying to take down these fraudsters. Remember, when it comes to the Somali American community and the fraud that's being perpetrated by them, this goes back in November. The New York Times had a piece on the way that Somali fraudsters are motivated by their culture. This is actually interesting. I'm going to pull this up for you as I'm thinking about it. Stealing from the government is widespread in Somali culture, according to the New York Times. In fact, they had a guy called Dr. Samatar talking about American society and how it's vulnerable to this kind of Somali fraud. This is one of my favorite stories to cite because of what the New York Times even just reveals about it. So here's their guy, Dr. Samatar. He's their Somali American expert, and Dr. Samatar lays out that basically the Somalis are coming in and stealing from Americans because that's their culture. Ahmad Samatar, this is what he said in the piece, a professor at Macalester College who is a leading expert in Somali studies, said a reckoning over the fraud and its consequences from Minnesota was overdue. Quote, American society and the denizens of the state of Minnesota have been extremely good to Somalis, said Dr. Samatar, who is a Somali American. Dr. Samatar, that's true. Americans have been very good to Somalis. Dr. Samatar said that Somali refugees who came to the United States after their country's civil war were raised in a culture in which stealing from the country's dysfunctional and corrupt government was widespread. In other words, it's a part of the culture. Quote, Minnesota, he said, proves susceptible to rampant fraud because it is so tolerant, so open, and so geared toward keeping an eye on the weak. Now, this is not true. This is not. There may be people in Minnesota who are these kinds of suckers, but the reason why Minnesota is so susceptible to this kind of fraud is because Democrats have been aiding and abetting it knowingly. Tim Walz knew that this fraud was going on. He was aiding it and abetting it. Keith Ellison is caught on tape aiding and abetting fraudsters who wanted investigations into their fraud to go away. And he told them, money buys you freedom. Donate to my campaign. We'll hassle them. One phone call from the Attorney General's office tends to get the results that we want. That was Keith Ellison, caught on tape saying that, speaking of someone who should be prosecuted. So, no, that's the one thing that Dr. Samatar gets wrong here. It's not merely this sort of like doe-eyed optimism, like just like complete like ignorance of the fact that you're being robbed. That's not what's happening here. The Democrats are aiding and abetting the theft of American taxpayer money to the tune of tens of billions of dollars. That's really going on. But this New York Times piece, again, from November of last year, points out that this is cultural. They were raised in a culture in which stealing from the country's government was widespread. Okay? Well, then don't come here and steal from us. All we ask for immigration is assimilation. That's what I mean. We ask, is it good for America? And if it's going to be good for America, assimilate into our culture. Our culture is not stealing from one another. Our culture is law and order. Our culture is sovereignty. Our culture is love of country. Our culture is respect for one another, neighborliness. Our culture is being a patriotic American. That's our culture. You're stealing from Americans? You're none of those things. Sorry, you're none of those things. And even the New York Times admits that it's a cultural problem, a huge one. So now we're seeing the effects of it. And so we got these huge raids going on in Minnesota, thank God, under Todd Blanche's Justice Department, Kash Patel's FBI, President Trump's administration. And it's funny because Tampon Tim Walz yesterday came out and he tried to take credit for it. Yeah, no, you heard me correctly. Tampon Tim Walz yesterday tried to take credit for this yesterday. He goes, today's raids by state and federal enforcement happened because our state agencies caught irregular behavior and reported it, he claims. That's how the system's supposed to work. And our agencies will keep at it as long as there are fraudsters around to put behind bars. He said, he goes, now let's work on a joint investigation into the killings of Alex Preddy and Renee Good. You psycho. You absolute psycho. So the guy who is encouraging people like Alex Preddy and Renee Good to block and assault law enforcement officers now wants an investigation into how it is that they died. I would start with you, you utter jackass. The blood is on your hands for Alex Preddy and Renee Good. And then this idea that he gets credit for the raids on the Somali fraudsters who've been running rampant in his state. It's laughable for any number of reasons, but one of the guys helping us to laugh at this, Kash Patel. Kash Patel, the FBI director, jumped in on this yesterday, and he goes, come again? This FBI and DOJ, with our DHS partners, drafted and executed every single search warrant today. But go ahead and take credit for our work while we smoke out the fraud plaguing Minnesota under your governorship. Good for Kash. The FBI director going, you get no credit. We award you 0 points, and may God have mercy on your soul. That's the reaction from Kash Patel. Wonderful news. Wonderful news. All right. In a moment, we're going to talk about, I would say, the single biggest prosecutorial announcement of the day yesterday, and it's to go after the COVID conspiracy. That's right. The people behind upending this entire country during the COVID chaos are now being prosecuted. And my next guest says we're just at the very beginning. We'll talk to David Asher in just a moment, all ahead on this edition of Vince. You know, I want to tell you about one of our great sponsors. Brickhouse Nutrition's got an amazing product called Lean. And let me just start by telling you, there's a lot of people out there who are using the weight loss injections. They're trying to lose weight with the injections. And the way those injections work, they lower your blood sugar, they reduce your appetite. But what if you want to lose the weight, but you don't want the painful weekly injections, especially when you hear about some of those side effects? This is why the doctors at Brickhouse Nutrition created a weight loss supplement called Lean. And the results, utterly remarkable. The studied ingredients in Lean have been shown to help lower your blood sugar, help you burn fat by converting it into energy, and help you curb your appetite and your cravings so you're less hungry. But listen, Lean by Brickhouse Nutrition, it's not for casual dieters. It's for serious people. It's for frustrated dieters with 10 or more pounds to lose. If that's you, let's get you started. 20% off, free rush shipping. Just visit takelean.com, enter Vince for your discount. That's promo code Vince at takelean.com. These statements have not been evaluated by the FDA. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease, and it's not a substitute or alternative for care from a healthcare provider. Also want to thank Stamps.com, great sponsor of our show today. And, you know, it's staggering back that right now in 2026, that many small business owners are they're still making those post office runs. You know, you have to jump in the car, head to the post office, drop things off, back and forth, spending your whole day doing that. Or you're stuck in these postage leases. This doesn't even make any sense, actually. Not in 2026. Mail and ship when you want, how you want, with Stamps.com. You see, with Stamps.com, you can actually send your mail and packages right from your computer or your phone 24/7. There's no lines to stand in, waiting to be attended to, no low supplies. Print your postage on demand, save up to 90% compared to some carrier rates, schedule carrier packages right at your door, get certified mail, tracking, compliant labels, and clear analytics. Your time is very valuable. Save your time for more useful things. You know, that you got to do these post office runs. Not anymore, not with Stamps.com. You can handle everything from your desk. Change how you run your business. Right now, you can try Stamps.com risk-free for 60 days. Go to Stamps.com, use the code Vince, get 60 days risk-free. 60 days gives you plenty of time to see how much time and money you can actually save on every shipment. That's Stamps.com, promo code Vince, Stamps.com, code Vince. Subscription fees will apply unless you cancel before the end of the 60-day period. Stamps.com, promo code Vince. And let me take a look here. I want to share this news with you, and then we'll get to our great guest, David Asher. But yesterday, we get COVID consequences. Anthony Fauci's top advisor, Dr. David Morens, has been charged with conspiracy against the United States involving the destruction, alteration, or falsification of records in federal investigations, as well as concealment, removal, or mutilation of records, and aiding and abetting. You know, this guy, David Morens, he may not have the highest profile name in the conversation. But I'm telling you right now, he's one of the single biggest creatures we could possibly be prosecuting right now for the COVID chaos. He deserves it. Remember, Anthony Fauci was given this big pardon by President Autopen. And I don't think that my personal opinion is the Autopen in no way gives you an actual pardon. So they should still test a prosecution against Anthony Fauci in court and see how much that Autopen stands up. But this guy, David Morans, is a big fish in this fight, a very big one. He's the ex NIAID official, and he's looking at up to 51 years in prison for concealing all sorts of information of value to the American public and destroying it. In fact, in emails that were released a couple years ago, he just admitted over and over and over again that he was destroying things, that he was using his private email to hide things from the American people. He was expressing things on a private account. He said, quote, "There are things I can't say except Tony is aware. And I have learned that there are ongoing efforts within NIH to steer this through with minimal damage to you, Peter, and colleagues, and to NIH and NIAID." He says this is an April 26, 2020 email that he sent to Peter Daszak, one of the chief conspirators here in the COVID chaos. And he talked about how the FOIA lady at his agency had taught him how to evade FOIA and delete information. They were deleting things before FOIA requests were coming in. So in other words, we have known for years that this guy was actively destroying information about COVID to prevent you from knowing anything about it. We've known it for years. But apparently it took Todd Blanche arriving at the Justice Department to finally see a prosecution. In fact, David Morans' sins were so obvious to even Democrat members of Congress that at one point, Democrat Congressman Kwesi Mafume, back in testimony in 2024, said to David Morans, "Your testimony today is going to come back and haunt you." Take a look at this clip. This is back in 2024, May of 24. Cut one. Here's David Morans testifying before Congress. Watch.
Dr. Morans, what else do you feel responsible for?
Pardon?
What else do you feel responsible for?
You know, I'm sorry, I'm getting this echo here, and should I turn off my microphone?
Yeah, you're using my time. Let me ask you, why didn't you report any of this to the ethics office?
I don't know. I didn't. I don't even know what our ethics office does, but Peter certainly reported. Peter reported it to the.
I'm not worried about Peter. I'm talking about you. Peter's not here. I just want to know if you thought this was ethically incorrect or improper, why didn't you report it to the ethics office?
What are you referring to as what being ethically improper?
Well, you just said you asked him why was he sending this to one email account when it should have gone to another one.
And you're asking me whether I thought what he was doing was unethical? What I was doing is unethical?
Sir, I think you're going to be haunted by your testimony today. And it's unfortunate. It's all on the record. And it doesn't make a lot of sense to many of us, certainly not to me.
That's even a Democrat said that. That's David Morans, now indicted. Joining us right now to discuss what this all means is David Asher. David Asher is with the Hudson Institute. He was also in the State Department as the lead investigator into the origins of COVID and just left the State Department again working for President Trump, investigating weapons of mass destruction. David Asher, great to have you back with me, sir.
Thanks very much. How are you
Tell
doing?
me how consequential this is. How big of a deal is this?
I mean, it's a big deal because it's the beginning of a conspiracy indictment, it appears to me. Morans' indictment indicates there's two co-conspirators, one who almost everyone on the internet, myself agree, is Peter Daszak, the head of the EcoHealth Alliance, the organization that was used as the funnel to move a huge amount of the NIAID, national NIH money to China and to researchers around the country that are engaged in dangerous gain-of-function research as well. And then another individual who is a former NIH, NIAID senior official who's at Boston University. When you're a co-conspirator, in my experience, and I've worked on everything from the Gambino crime family on down in terms of indictments and RICO conspiracies, you are basically almost certainly going to be indicted if you're not indicted already. I mean, if you're a conspirator, you're a conspirator. So I think this is the beginning, not the end, of a wider process of justice being finally brought to these people that ultimately resulted in the killing, basically, of between 20 and 27 million people around the world, including 1.3 million Americans. It's crazy. It's crazy our government funded this stuff.
So first and foremost, why do you think it took so long? We knew David Morans was destroying this information for years. That was a matter of public record for well over 2 years now. Why did it take until Todd Blanche arrived?
I don't know. Todd's a good financial prosecutor. That's why the president hired him in his defense when he was being ridiculously accused of real estate fraud, which is nuts, for paying too much tax. I mean, that's like, no one's ever heard of that before in New York City. You know, it's. I think it was the FBI's been pushing for this for a long time. They've had a closed up investigation for over 2 years. I don't know why AG Bondi didn't move this forward, but knowing Todd, I think he's just got a sense of justice and an injustice, and he knows that these charges are not inherently that strong coming out of the gate, but it's what comes up afterward. Like yesterday, we learned that Ralph Barrick, who is really the most important U.S. contributor to the creation of COVID-19, at University of North Carolina, was banned from the campus, as far as I can understand it. All of his grants were stripped from him, and it sounds like he's basically being removed from the faculty. That indicates to me that if he's not under indictment, he's under something really serious. I mean, he's probably the most legendary and capable genetic virus developer in the world, and he trained the Bat Lady in China.
Yes.
So, this sounds like this is the beginning of a RICO conspiracy case, which would be justified after all these years. Why didn't it happen before? You tell me, Vince. I don't know. I mean, it makes no sense. It should have.
So a lot of these guys, it's as you well know, perhaps better than most, definitely better than most. A lot of these guys who you're citing were involved in quite clearly a conspiracy to conceal the origins of COVID. They were manipulating the scientific literature to prevent the public from realizing that it's in fact almost entirely certain that the virus came from the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Yet they conspired to hide that detail while having financial interests in the question.
Yeah, and receiving tens of millions of dollars in grants from NIAID, in effect, for being part of the conspiracy to conceal. One of the most notorious is a guy named Christian Anderson out at Scripps Institute in California. I think he received $8.7 million from Fauci after he agreed to switch his position when he was asked what the origin was. And he originally said it was almost certainly came out of a lab accident, and it was based on the sequence that he analyzed, and where he saw small but technically important irregularities that almost were certainly inserted by humans, not by nature. He went from saying that it was like 80% certain it came out of a lab in a period of like 3 or 4 days to saying, it was like no percentage possible. It never provided any evidence. And this was all in their emails. All this stuff came out in the emails. And it was after he met with Fauci repeatedly. Yes. And Fauci and I would assume Morans in the background greased the skids and said, "Hey, you guys switch your position, we'll pay you millions of dollars."
Yes.
Shut up. And that's exactly the Chinese paid him too, by the way.
I want to get into China in a moment, but just so people realize, the COVID, the bug, COVID-19, was a picture-perfect match for what Peter Daszak and EcoHealth Alliance were trying to generate with DARPA. They had previously filed a grant request with DARPA, and they described in detail what COVID-19 ended up looking like. And so I saw somebody say early in this process, when it became clear that this was man-made, they said, well, wait a second. The guy applied. It'd be like applying to strap horns to the heads of horses, and then all of a sudden unicorns start popping out of the Wuhan Institute of Virology. And people are like, well, of course, It was Peter Daszak and EcoHealth Alliance, funded by American taxpayers.
Yeah, no one did a better job of capturing the absurdity of this than Jon Stewart did several years ago. But the Wuhan Institute, the only place in the world where you study bat-borne coronaviruses, it's 1,000 miles away from any bat, basically, that could be associated with it, and because they harvest bats from all over Asia, including China. And so, the bat didn't mate with the pangolin, which is this weird armadillo-like creature, but it does have a pangolin like receptor binder domain, I believe, in it. So, what happened was, this is pure genetic engineering. I've been involved in biotechnology for many years, including I'll admit it, for maybe the first time on TV. Our partners in Europe are the Mérieux family that who built the Wuhan Institute of Virology's BSL-4 high-end lab, the one that's all glass and shiny. They oversaw the construction. They warned me personally back in 2017 that they thought that the Wuhan Institute was involved in a biological weapons program. And that was because they got kicked out. They were supposed to have 50 researchers from France on site. And so this is one of the first things I described to Secretary Pompeo and his staff when I asked to be allowed to investigate the origin of COVID. I said, I've been hearing about this for years. And by the way, the intelligence community was given that same information in 2017 by the French, and so was the State Department, and it was ignored. We had the ad information in our systems when I started at State in late 2019 under Pompeo. So even before COVID had come out of the gates in a global way, we knew that there was very suspicious bioweapons related activity going on at that institute, and it was ignored. And so I'm very grateful to the acting AG Blanche, who's a great guy and a real effective individual, for making, and Kash Patel, who's another awesome individual, for making this thing happen. Because the evidence been there for years. We have so much information on our systems. I mean, just been back at State dealing with biological weapons, in part. The stuff the Chinese are doing now makes the Wuhan Institute work on COVID look like nothing. But the key thing is, this was synthetic biology. We can prove that, and we know it from information that the FBI will present, I'm sure, in the context of this Morin's court trial. Synthetic biology could save us all, through curing cancers and things, or kill us all. And right now, my unfortunate view is it's more likely to kill us all unless we try to regulate what our opponents are doing to use it against us.
But if I'm understanding what you're saying about China correctly, China right now, in your view, has man-made viruses that could threaten to destroy humanity?
Absolutely. MERS that can spread very readily. Ebola that can spread not just readily, but actually slightly more slowly than normal. So that, think about Ebola, it kills people off so quickly, it doesn't spread very fast. But they're doing this with synthetic biology. So these are viruses that are almost unstoppable in terms of the deadliness. I mean, Ebola was like 80% kill rate, MERS 50%. I mean, why are they doing research on these viruses? And we know they're doing it, and it's not even classified. I mean, we see it in their papers, but we know on the classified level, I can't get into, but it'll scare the hell out of you when that stuff becomes declassified, which I expect could happen in the context of this Morin's court case. I think this thing is the beginning of something bigger.
One more on the potential for the threat from China and whatever viruses they have. I remember during the pandemic, there was some consideration that perhaps China had viruses that were targeted based on genetics. In other words, they could protect the Chinese people from a virus, but they would kill lots of others, or they would specifically target people on the basis of their genetics. Is that your understanding?
Yeah, they've been working on genetically selected agents since at least 2011, when they declared that they were doing so at the Biological Weapons Convention meeting in Europe. And so, I assume they've been working on it before that. I don't know that they can actually achieve that effect yet, but in theory, it can be achieved. You can definitely target certain types of genetic traits. My friend Steve Quay, who's a famous doctor and genetic researcher into cancer, but he's also become a famous, expert on COVID. He's got a book coming out where he on the sequence of COVID, where he basically explains how all this is possible. And we know they're working on it. I mean, whether they can do it yet, I don't think COVID was a genetically selected agent, but they had the aspirations for it to be. So, this thing is just this is such a cesspool of dirt and grime. It's just ridiculous that the U.S. government contributed to the creation of a pandemic that killed 1.3 million of our citizens and cost us over 60% of GDP. I mean, it's amazing our country is held together through all this. And I give President Trump a lot of credit for leadership. Look, he almost died of this thing, too.
How deep is the Chinese corruption in the United States that confounded our ability to confront this? Because Dr. Fauci, I remember early in the pandemic, was making excuses for China, saying they were being great partners. The World Health Organization was entirely controlled by China. Their leader was hand-selected by China, and they made excuses for the Chinese throughout the beginning of all of this. How much is Chinese corruption a factor in this?
Well, I don't think it's corruption. I think it's actually covert action. I've run several major covert action programs in my career against foreign adversaries. And what the Chinese are doing here is it goes beyond co-optation of individuals. It's systematic, it's top down, and it's being controlled through a wide network of individuals, institutions. They're using money as a tool to entrap people. And that's a classic intelligence operations technique that, all of us who worked in Intel were taught when we were going through our school years. They entrapped the NIH, and they entrapped the scientists around the world with the lure of being able to go to China, earn miles, stay at fancy hotels, and receive tens of millions of dollars, not hundreds of millions of dollars in grants. And then they entrapped the National Institutes of Health itself by encouraging it to basically promote what's called the 1,000 Talents program. NIH on its website, even today, I believe still has a web page that's promoting the 1,000 Talents program for China, which is a recruitment for their intelligence service. I mean, the silly season is not ended, and we've got to. We still have to make an effort to bring this whole wall of China that's confronting our basically public health system down. I mean, let's not forget though that, I worked on a lot of other stuff related to China at State in the last year. I mean, the biggest cyber operations in history that attacked our phone system, attacked our logistics system, attacked our banking system. Salt, Bolt, Silk, Typhoon. These are the largest attacks in history. What have we done to respond? Actually, nothing. What have we done to respond to COVID? Until now, nothing. But I have hope that there'll be a response finally. The president really wants to have a good relationship with Xi Jinping, but he needs to realize to have a good relationship with the Chinese, you got to have a relationship based on coercion, the same way they approach us. I mean, in The Art of the Deal, he actually extensively talks about that. I hope he just rereads his own great book before he goes and meets with Xi, because these people are arch manipulators of our own gullibility.
The president realizes that strength is leverage. I mean, that an adversary like Xi Jinping will respect strength when President Trump demonstrates this. I think you're right about that. Lastly, I know you've got a busy day today, David Asher. We talk about these indictments for COVID. What are the chances you think that we get more of them quickly? What do you anticipate here?
I mean, this guy Barrick, who is really the central conspirator as a scientist, he's the guy who mastered the ability to edit the coronavirus genome and synthesize it. I mean, he's being basically fired, it looks like, from the University of North Carolina, where he's been their all-star scientist for decades. For some reason, you got to assume it's tied in. It happened on the same day as the Morin's indictment was unveiled. So, logically, it would seem that it's likely that he's tied into it.
In other words, there's very likely a sealed indictment into him, and
it would seem that way just based on it'd be a hell of a coincidence if it's not. And then you've got a network of individuals, including people inside the government. We've had 6 whistleblowers from CIA who've come forward to the Senate and House Intelligence Committee about the fact that they were, under Biden, were given bonuses for basically changing their view on the origin of COVID from moderate to high confidence that it was lab-borne and came out of an accident in China to it came out of nature. I mean, like, this thing's going to go to a very high level, including up to President Biden himself. I'm pretty confident, which is why he pardoned his whole family. And he pardoned himself. He wasn't dying. So this is I think we're heading toward a sort of denouement maybe here finally, and thank God for it. It's just 5 years too late.
Yeah, it's just one of the biggest events of our entire lives, and I think it was even with James Comey being prosecuted yesterday, I think that the David Morin's prosecution was the biggest story of Justice Department accountability, and an important one we desperately need. David Asher, thank you very much for your time. We could definitely talk for hours. We have in the past, and I'll definitely have you back. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Vince. You're the best.
David Asher with the Hudson Institute. The guy's been right at the center of investigating all of this. And yeah, isn't he great? Fooey50 said, excellent, intelligent guest. Yeah, David's great because he's got this wonderful knowledge and wonderful insight and an unfortunate front row seat to all of this chaos. And we really appreciate him and his wisdom today. Okay. Yes. So look, this comes down to the United States Department of Justice and what they're up to. I will stand by what I said before. I'm very encouraged here by Todd Blanche. I think that these guys have a lot underway and more to come. And the big one that you and I are waiting for, I would say, is the grand conspiracy case. What we're kind of keeping an eye on South Florida, and to what extent, when do we see the big prosecution of John Brennan, the former CIA director? Does James Comey get pulled into that prosecution as well? Because a grand conspiracy is not conducted by one person. You don't conspire by yourself. This is not a case of going after schizophrenics. This is going after people, a team of people. And if you're going after Brennan for a grand conspiracy against the president involving, say, the Trump-Russia collusion hoax and the Steele dossier and the intelligence community assessment and lying about jamming that phony Steele dossier drafted by Hillary Clinton's campaign directly into all of that, well, that's John Brennan and James Comey. The public record on that has been super clear. So you have a grand jury that's been sending out these subpoenas, and they've sent out hundreds of them. On the list, we know Brennan, Comey, you've got Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, all these familiar names that you and I have been so deeply concerned about for their abuses of power through the years, right at the center of that case. I don't think Todd Blanche is going to tap the brakes here. I don't think at all. I think one of the other elements, if my instincts are correct, I think one of the things that he's running into is this institutional resistance to doing things that Trump wants. And what I mean by that is things that Trump voters want fundamentally. We want justice. But it's not always fashionable in the leadership class to pursue justice on behalf of what the American people want. It's a big club, and we ain't in it, is usually the way we assess this, as George Carlin might say. And, like guys like Comey, they don't get prosecuted. They don't have to be subjected to this kind of accountability. And so what's probably happening inside of the Justice Department is lower level prosecutors, career prosecutors, who have kind of envisioned themselves as, little protectors of the ruling class, not that interested in holding those people accountable, worried about what this might do to their career in the future. If I go after the wrong person's friend, will that stymie my professional advancement? They've resisted oftentimes going after people like James Comey or John Brennan. They don't want to do it because they're afraid of what it's going to do to their relationships and their career advancement. You've got to break that. You got to bring in outsiders. You got to bring in somebody like Todd Blanche, who's been on the president's defense team on the receiving end of this kind of tyranny and doesn't want to suffer any kind of institutional fools who are looking to protect the kind of rot that would lead America fully towards destruction. So he's breaking this. That's a great sign, and he should keep doing that. My sense is, I'm watching this, and I think what's happening is he's grabbing these lower-level prosecutors by the shirt collars and going, get off your ass, you've got the case, bring it. Stop trying to slow walk this to death because you're afraid you're going to suffer some sort of personal blowback. If you don't act to restore justice in our country right now, we're not going to have a country for you to have a career in. So get your ass up there and prosecute these guys. That's the message. And I think it's effective. I think it's going through. So we'll see more of these. We'll see more of these. I can't imagine, and just watching what we saw in the last week, that this is anywhere near the end. So we'll keep on it. As always, and Zeke, my buddy, says fire Thune as well. Yeah, let's fire Thune. I agree. Let's get a new leader. Let's get a new leader in the Senate. Somebody who can actually pass simple things like, what is it? Voter integrity. We'll keep covering it all. I've got the big national radio show coming up today, thevinceshow.com for your local radio listings. We also do this live on Rumble, rumble.com/Vince. The nice thing today, on a day where I'm talking about the Justice Department and the FBI, the great Dan Bongino is joining me on the radio show today. Don't miss that. Don't miss that. Dan loves stopping by the show. We're going to have him on the program. It's going to be wonderful. Speaking of Dan, he's got his mighty podcast coming up today. That's coming up at rumble.com/Bongino, 10 a.m. Eastern time. Very eager to hear what he has to say there. And then Haley Caronilla got her amazing show, rumble.com/Haley. Why? Haley with two Y's. Why? Because she is amazing. Rumble.com/Haley. She's on at noon Eastern time, only on Rumble, live on Rumble. She's great. And you're great. Appreciate you being with us as always. We'll have another epic show for you tomorrow. I promise. Can't wait to do it. Up next here on Rumble, Graham Allen.